Learning to fly a quadcopter, this time on Hak5.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
My name is Shannon Morse.
It's your weekly dose of Technolust.
And we are doing more drone work.
Oh yes, very exciting because guess what?
Are we flying today?
We're flying.
Yay! Finally! Gosh, I've been so freaking excited about that. So today we are learning to fly. Finally, super exciting. Of course, if you guys have been following along in this series, we have been building a drone or a quadcopter.
A multi-rotor, yes. Specifically, we have been building a quadcopter to be less than 250 grams, 8.8 ounces, which makes it completely exempt from FAA regulations, or at least here in the United States. And it's also being built as a platform to learn all of the ins and outs of the different components and kind of the basics of multi-rotor avionics, and it's all come together. Very exciting.
And today we are going to learn how to fly it. So of course, if you have not been following along with building your own as well, that's totally okay. These learning to fly tips apply to pretty much any craft. So you can either build it or you can buy. We absolutely recommend starting out with like a really cheap toy.
Oh, yeah.
You can get one of those Hubsans on Amazon for like, $30 or whatever it might be right now, or a Syma. Very, very inexpensive. Highly recommend.
Totally. You guys should definitely get a toy first because you won't be on the side of at the park just like crying with like broken carbon fiber and parts everywhere. Anyway, so with that, what we're going to do is offer our top tips for first-time pilots. And to start, you're going to need a few things.
Oh.
Now, firstly, I want to say you need a safe space, preferably an empty park on a day without too much wind, or in our case, we're using a warehouse, which takes the whole wind issue out entirely. And if you'll be learning outside, just make sure that you're at least 5 miles away from any airports, and that is the way the crow flies, of course.
And then next you're going to need plenty of charged batteries, all the batteries in all the world. So for each of these exercises, we are going to want to burn a battery on it until we are confident with the movements. So that means flying the entire pack until our low voltage alarm starts buzzing. And tip, I also want to say this, if you can, bring your battery charger to the park, hook it up to your car's battery or through an inverter so that you can recharge as you fly so you don't have to go back home when your battery's dead.
Yes, there. And you know what? I say burning batteries, don't light fire to lithium polymer batteries.
Don't
That's
do
bad.
that.
I just mean like run them dead and just keep them going, because when you're first learning to fly, you just plow through batteries. So finally, we are going to need a very good way to visually identify our craft. Knowing which way is forward and back is so super important, as we're going to be learning what we call line of sight, or LOS flying. And that's really important to learn that first. This won't matter as much when we start flying FPV, or first-person view, with wireless cameras and video goggles. But for right now, we want to ensure that we have confidence piloting the craft with just our eyes, say in the event that an FPV system fails, and we need to be able to like look up and see it. Now, Shannon, as you can tell with our craft, it's pretty much a black X of carbon fiber. There is nothing discerning on this, and we've got black propellers on here. So you know what I like to do is just quite simply use some electric tape.
Oh, that's a good idea.
A little bit of this will go a long way.
Yeah.
And what you'll want to do is go ahead and put some colored electric tape on the back of it, since that's the side that we're going to be focusing on most.
Right.
Some people also do like different colored propellers, like green propellers in
do
the
some
front.
neon colors. There you go. Those will stand out outside. Now, before each flight, we'll want to do this pre-flight check. Are we 5 miles away from the nearest airport? Yes. Are there people or dogs around that will get in our flight path, because that would be really sad? No. And are there any wires from the batteries getting snagged by the propellers? We should probably check, just to make sure. Now, these sound a little bit obvious, but you would be surprised how many seasoned professionals crash shortly after takeoff because of a loose cable just gets caught in the motors. I mean, that's just not very fun at all. So just take your time, look over everything and look over everywhere before arming the craft.
I've done that one. I don't think we'll do it so much with this one because it's so tight, the tolerances on all of our cables. But something like this, like we haven't secured really our receiver. And our receiver could easily, I mean, it probably won't, this wire isn't going to stop our propeller from spinning, but we also don't want to chop it off because it's kind of important. So it's just something to keep in mind. All right, so We are now ready to fly, and the first thing is to turn on our transmitter and make sure that we have the correct model selected. Then, on a very level surface, we can go ahead and plug the battery into our craft. Now, we're securing our battery to our quadcopter using a Velcro strap. You could just as well use a rubber band, but really it comes down to personal preference. Either way, make sure it's on tight and that it's not going anywhere. Yeah, I mean, like, really, you don't want like your battery coming off mid-flight.
Yeah,
so that is like another important one to secure, because I've seen that happen too. It's no fun. Your center of gravity becomes all wonky as it's like hanging below, and oh man, bad stuff. All right, so once you've got the quadcopter booted up though, you'll want to go ahead and make a quick test, and just what you want to do is basically ensure that your transmitter is speaking effectively to your quadcopter.
Right.
As you'll noted before, we bound one of our switches on our transmitter, its auxiliary channel, to the buzzer. So one of the things I like to do is just quickly flip that switch and make sure it's beeping.
It's an easy check.
Yes, it is. Also, speaking of auxiliary channels, we set the other auxiliary channel to our flight modes, and in this case, we're switching between angle and rate mode. This may be controversial, Shannon, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I recommend that when you begin flying, the very first stages of flying, learning line of sight, you want to go ahead and do that in angle mode.
Oh.
Then, once you understand the craft, once you understand the avionics and how it's going to react to things, when you get into FPV, that is a great time to switch over to rate mode. It will feel so much more natural when you're in those video goggles.
Oh.
Again, that's just my opinion, so feel free to let me know in the comments below if I'm a terrible person for saying such blasphemy, but also you're not going to have that mode if you're trying on a toy Syma or Hubsan anyway.
That's true. We should also mention, with speaking of modes, we did touch on that before, but let's go ahead and take a moment quickly to go over what the 3 basic modes are in clean flight or flight controller software, what they actually mean. So first off is angle mode. It's the most basic and the easiest to fly. It's a self-leveling mode, meaning that when you let off the sticks of the quadcopter, it will try to right itself so that it's level. Makes sense. Now, when you push the pitch lever all the way forward, you are telling the quadcopter what angle of attack to have specifically.
Right, so the idea is you do this, and you're not saying go forward, you're actually saying this is that angle, and this is that angle, right? Yeah. So that's angle mode. Is, you see how that kind of works, is like you're saying, okay, go there, and then it's going to stop, because that's the angle you've told it to do. Oh, I'm sorry, it's backwards, but that's the angle you've told it to do, like that.
And then you have rate mode, which is sometimes called manual mode, or acro mode, since it is perfect for acrobatics.
Yes, it is.
Which sounds super fun. And this one is not self-leveling. So the easiest way to think about it is that instead of telling the quadcopter what angle of attack to have when you push the pitch lever forward, you are telling it at what rate to change its angular velocity of rotation. So that means if you pitch it all the way forward, it'll eventually do a front flip. And you're probably not going to end up pulling that off in angle mode.
No, you're not. So here's why. So in angle mode, like, this is all the way forward of an angle that we're going to allow it to have, and depending on the way we've got it configured, we could say maybe this is as high of an angle of attack that we'll ever want to do when we push it this far forward. Yeah. Whereas rate mode, if you subtly push it forward, so in angle mode, you subtly push it forward and it's like, okay, go make this angle.
Yeah.
What you're saying in rate mode is, okay, pitch forward at this rate. Now this is a slow rate. If we just subtly push it forward, it's going to slowly start going forward, but
it'll keep going.
It will keep going forward slowly until it's like this, and then no fun is being had. Now, if you jack it forward really quick, what you're telling it to do is set the velocity that you want it to pitch forward. And so what'll happen is, if you're an accomplished pilot, you can do little things like that, where you push it forward really fast, and it'll spin over. And then you gotta, you know, jack it back just a bit to catch it, but you'll be able to do acrobatics, and that's one of the fun things about rate mode.
So what's the last one?
The last one is this thing called horizon mode, and it's kind of a hybrid of those two. So basically, it's a sort of combination. When the sticks are really close to the center, then you'll be in that gentle mode. So if I just push it just a little forward, I'm still in what you could consider angle mode, where it's self-leveling. But when I push it far out to the extents, what I've done is, once I cross that threshold, it's going to go into a sort of rate mode.
Okay.
I think it's best really to have one of your switches basically bound to between rate and angle. I mean, if you've got a 3-way switch, you might as well have it do all 3. But I feel like stay in angle mode until you got the basic concepts of quadcopter aviation. And then once you've donned your FPV video goggles, rate mode's gonna come naturally then.
He loves the video goggles.
Oh yeah.
Like so serious. So, okay, our transmitter is on. We've got the quadcopter that's powered up. We're in angle mode. We've got them connected to each other. So let's go ahead and get flying. So first step, start your engines. And each flight controller software will be a little bit different, but typically there is a startup or arming sequence with the controller sticks. So for us, using clean flight, it's throttle all the way down and rudder all the way to the right. So push that left stick down, there you go, and then the right one, there you go, to the right, so rudder to the right, and then you'll hear a few beeps once it signifies that it's connected.
Right, you may notice that unlike other quadcopters, the propellers aren't going to start spinning automatically, and that's because we've set that in our configuration. But keep that in mind though, because it's armed, but it's not spinning up. If our quadcopter doesn't get any input from us in a few seconds after arming, it's going to go ahead and automatically disarm itself.
Right.
So right after you're armed, what you'll want to do is gently start increasing the throttle, just enough to cause the motors to spin up, but don't lift off the ground at this point. We really just want to get those motors spinning.
Right, because the first tip in learning to fly is getting a really good feel for the pitch, the roll, and yaw, while still mostly just on the ground. Now there is this really awesome principle in flight called the ground effect. So this is really cool. Darren taught me about this. It's where the craft will sort of float on a pocket of its own prop wash really close to the ground. So typically the altitude is about half the length of its prop. So if we give it just enough throttle, we'll sort of hover around 2 inches off of the ground.
Which is kind of awesome because we have 5-inch props, about half of that. What'll happen is you'll start to see it'll kind of like do this, and it's like there's a little pillow of air underneath it. And personally, this is my technique, but I find this to be a great way to learn. And I feel like this is really important because what we want to do is next, when we learn to hover, we're going to need to make like all of these little minute micro adjustments to our pitch, to our roll, or in our yaw, just to keep our craft centered. And so with enough practice, what's going to happen is that all of these little movements are just going to become natural to us.
Cool.
Just like how you make a million little minute movements to keep your balance when, you know, with your ankles and your toes and your hips and everything when you climb stairs. And, you know, basically the idea here is to get feeling really comfortable with those controls while coasting. It's kind of like learning to crawl before you learn to walk.
Of course, you would not want to do that vice versa. You'd probably fall. So the best way to get a feel for this is to simply do this box pattern.
Yes.
So while keeping the back of the craft facing you, go ahead and coast it forward, and then you stop. And then you strafe to the right, and then you stop. And then you bring it back and you stop before you strafe left, and then hopefully you return to where you began. So this might not seem like a lot, but it's actually pretty tough to do your first time around. But getting a feel for it like this is so important. So keep doing that box pattern, play with different angles of attack. Just don't go so far in one direction that your props end up touching the ground because you're sitting on that pillow, so you don't want to raise it up too high. Stay around that natural place on the ground. But do get a feel for how the craft reacts. And then make sure that you always keep the back of the craft facing you. And of course, if you need a little rudder to spin it left or right, just gently apply just a little bit. Now you don't want to turn it around so that it's facing you because suddenly then left becomes right and right becomes left. So make sure that its butt is facing you the whole time.
Yeah, and that's really, we emphasize that with all of these, and that's like a good practice on the very first go, because you want to get comfortable with all of those different maneuvers without having to break your mind into thinking relative instead of absolute. So, I mean, some brains take to it faster than others.
Not me.
This is my personal tip, is this coasting box step. I mean, as you might imagine, it is like the very basics. It is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I mean,
bringing
so
in the
if you
dance
can,
moves.
well, I'm just saying, if you can waltz, you can box step and vice versa.
Right.
But once you have burned a few batteries on just doing this box step, it is time to bring it to the hover.
Yeah.
And an important safety note here, if things go wrong, just cut the throttle, right? Trying to save a craft when it's going off and doing its own thing, you're oftentimes going to make the situation worse. So this is why we say learn in a place free from people and pets, but I just want to say that if things go wrong, just cut the throttle.
Yeah, you don't want Fido to eat your drone.
You don't want to eat Fido, because that's an insurance claim you don't want to get into.
And a common mistake is to jack the throttle up way too fast. Which I definitely did the first time I messed with Hubsan.
Most people, the first time they ever pick up a quadcopter, they go woo, and it goes woo, and they go, oh no, and like there's no like second step, so it's kind of like chess. You got to think the next move, like all right, I'm going to bring the throttle up, but be not thinking about the throttle up, be thinking about what you're going to do after.
So you really want to make really small movements with the sticks. So some people feel that pinching them gives them better precision. Other people use their thumbs, but either way, just be gentle. Be gentle and nice to the drone.
I'm a pincher, not a.
You are. I'm a thumber.
Yeah, we like to call those dumb thumbers, but you know, whatever. All right, so for the hover, what you'll want to do is go ahead and keep the back of it towards you, and you'll want to slowly raise the craft in front, several feet in front of you until it's hovering at about chest level. If you go a little higher, that's okay. Just slowly ease off that throttle until you can keep it about chest level. And here's the thing, the craft, it is going to want to bank to one side or the other. It is going to want to pitch either forward or back, and this is normal.
It's not going to be perfect.
No, it's not. Only in the most advanced quadcopters with things like GPS hold are you even going to be able to eliminate drift. And I'm just going to tell you, it's those kinds of craft, like the DJI Phantom is the classic example. It is not the best craft to learn on because you're not telling it pitch forward or throttle up. You're saying go up, go forward, and it's doing all of the actual flying. And so like it gives you a false sense of security as a pilot when you learn on something like that, because when you throttle up and it just stays there like frozen in space, you're not getting you're not learning those little micro movements that you need to be able to walk and keep the craft centered. So anyway, those are not the sort of things to learn on, which is why we're doing this. And just use what you've learned from that box pattern, because what you'll end up doing is you're going to make these little nudges just to keep the quadcopter back in its place. Yeah,
that's a good point. And then of course you can try imagining an invisible beach ball. So this is a really cool idea of to think about it, which is basically thinking of a beach ball and then you keep the craft inside of it.
Are you doing the invisible beach ball,
I have
Shannon?
an invisible beach ball.
Yeah,
I have my gypsy ball. Watch me.
Right, she's a festy girl for sure.
So you'll find you'll find that the more subtle the correction movements that you make, the easier it is to control. So if, for example, you push too far left, and you'll immediately need to push right, which kind of stinks.
Right.
And then you're in what's called pilot-induced oscillation. So you can think of it as lightly nudging a rubber ducky floating in the bathtub.
Well, Shannon, that is a fantastic way to think about quadcopters. But invisible beach balls and rubber duckies this time on Hak5. But yeah, you definitely don't, because you're like, oh no, it's drifting to the right, left. Oh no, it's way too far right, right.
It's like
and then,
driving.
And then you're just like, yeah, you're all over the place. Like,
don't do that on black ice.
It's funny too. You see little kids pantomime driving a car, and they're doing this, right? But you know, when you drive a car, you're like, I'm making a left, right? Unless you're in the school bus, right? And then, okay, here's the thing. As with the other example, what we're going to want to do is keep the back of the craft facing us at all times. And if you find that you constantly need to apply, say, yaw or roll or pitch in one direction all the time to keep it level, well, it may be at that time a good idea to start adding a little bit of trim. We talked about these little buttons here that you push forward or back to just say like, oh, the center point. If you're constantly pitching forward, you can press a little bit of forward trim and it'll go ahead and say, oh, this is the new center point, and it'll stop drifting a little bit.
So do you just deal with it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Honestly, if it's not too bad, I say deal with it in your thumbs, get a feel for it. It's like having different dance partners or something. You're going to, every craft is going to be different. You're going to have to get a feel for them, and you could spend forever trying to get a perfect trim. It doesn't exist. So it's always going to drift in one place or another, and that's okay. Just keep practicing the invisible beach ball and burn as many batteries as it takes to just feel absolutely confident with that move.
Okay, so I'm feeling confident. I'm ready, I'm hovering in place, so it's time to take it a step further. So the next exercise is to fly away from yourself and then back towards yourself. So it's sort of like how we did with the box pattern, but this time while hovering at about chest level instead of way down on the ground. So the idea here is to get a feel for the speed of the craft, its stopping characteristics, and how it handles in forward flight.
And again, with all of these, you want to keep the back of the craft towards you so that left is right and right is left. And as long as you do that, you'll be fine. If, again, you lose orientation, cut the throttle, gravity will take care of the rest. And once you spent a few battery packs flying away from yourself and back, the next thing is to do left and right. Just bank to the left, bank to the right. In front of yourself, do this with the craft a good distance away from you, but in front of you, and again, keep the back of it towards you. And then just try this with varying different amounts of roll to kind of get a feel for how the craft handles when you stop. So, try like slowly banking left and right, try fast, and then you try your air brakes when you're going like this, and then you have to stop, and then come back and do it the other way.
And then once you've gotten a hang of these, it is time to get a little bit more advanced. Super excited, start using a rudder some more. So one way is to circle your craft. So you want to get it in a hover mode, just like before, with the back of the quadcopter facing you, obviously, and then slowly at a safe distance, make sure you're at a safe distance, walk a circle around the craft while giving it just a little bit of rudder movement to yaw the craft around with you. So the idea is to keep the back of the craft facing you while hovering, even while you are circling it.
Yes, another fun one, of course, circle strafing for the win, WASD, right? Okay, is take this and then swap places now, grab your partner, do-si-do, you are now the quadcopter standing in the middle and have it spin around you. This is a really fun one. Basically, once you've gotten the hang of that, go ahead and take your craft and have it fly the circle around you, so you kind of do this, and you're spinning, but you're keeping the back of it always facing towards you.
That's so cool.
And go ahead and just do that for as many batteries as it takes to become confident. Don't go too fast, you get a little dizzy, as I just became. But yes, that's a fun one.
And then finally, we have built up to the very last step in our basic beginners flying exercises, and that is called walking the dog, which Darren keeps on recommending in these episodes, but he hasn't showed me until now. So this is a really fun one. This is really cool. So basically, you're building on all of those previous steps that you'll want to hover the quadcopter at about chest level, several feet from from you, right in front of you, and then you want to go for a stroll. So you can walk a figure 8 around trees, you can walk a figure 8 around other obstacles, all the while keeping the craft at about chest level with its back facing you, its butt facing you, and then this will have you making those minute throttle and those roll adjustments to keep it hovering while applying yaw and pitch to keep it going forward and then turning. So you're applying everything at once.
Yeah, and I must say, when I first started flying, I spent days just walking the dog and becoming proficient in it. And I would say maybe keep a logbook of your flight times. It's a good way to track your learning progress. It is. Like, I literally wanted to have 100 hours before I did FPV.
That's cool.
Because I wanted to know that, there's no it's not like flight school. It's not like getting a real pilot's license.
Yeah.
There's, thankfully, I guess you could say, we don't live in that kind of a world yet. But dude, just don't jump right into the deep end.
Yeah.
Spend some time with this. This is the #1 most single helpful exercise that I used when I learned to fly, and it lends itself to so many fun variations too, because you'll get a little bored. So try some low flying with it, some high flying, but you'll notice that if you ever have an emergency where you need to bring a quadcopter back down to you to safety, you're going to find these movements very instinctive. So just be sure that you do enough practice so that it is just like second nature, like walking the dog.
So I think that's it for our absolute beginner basics, and we have plenty of homework until next week when we actually take it to the next level, because we're going to get even more advanced. So I just want to emphasize how important practice is. So just be sure to get a bunch of batteries, go at your own pace, take your time, because these are the fundamentals that the rest of your piloting career will be built on. So there's no need to fly through them. Get it?
I see what you did there. All right, well, anyway.
Sorry, that was terrible.
So keep in mind safety again. Things get all wrong, just drop the throttle. Gravity will always have you landing, and let me tell you, I don't crash. I just land real hard.
Right.
If you start flying in an empty field and then suddenly a half hour later dog walkers show up, keep a respectful distance, find another field. The last thing you want to do is endanger someone or have your quadcopter chased and eaten by Fluffy.
Right. And remember, again, you don't need to build a quadcopter like ours to learn to fly, even though it's really fun and I recommend it because it's super awesome and you can totally customize things. But typically it's recommended that you find a toy like the Syma or the Hubsan or otherwise.
Proto X is another good one.
Yeah, there's
a
plenty
bunch
of them.
out there.
We'll put some links in the show notes. The controls on most of them are identical to the big ones that you will be building eventually, I hope. So the muscle memory will translate completely and you should be fine going from one to another.
Yeah, no, I mean, I learned on Hubsan and, throttle's on the left and, pitch and roll are on the right. It makes sense. And so, the only thing that changes is the crafts and the transmitters get bigger, but otherwise.
So much fun.
Yeah. I should probably also throw out that people also like to learn with simulators. I haven't personally had that experience, although I will say.
You used to play flight sims like crazy.
Okay.
Lies.
I more or less learned ATC calls with the flight sims, but that's neither here nor there. But I was also if you were ever on VATSIM, I was November Oscar Whiskey Bravo.
Fury 3.
Or
what?
November Echo Whiskey Bravo. Yeah, sorry, I'm a noob. The point was that this is just a lot of fun, and I want you guys to just take your own pace and have fun with it. Everybody keeps mentioning I have one of these. I just can't find it in the warehouse right now, but the Turnigy 9X is another fantastic flight transmitter, and it's USB. Will hook up to a computer, and you can do awesome. There's some open source simulators out there, so I want to throw that out there if you want to just go ahead and hey, it's a great way to practice on a rainy day if you don't have the warehouse to fly through. Or if you want to fly through the warehouse, follow Hak5 on Twitter and find out when our next meetup is.
But they should also go to...
They should go to, if you're digging this, you're going to love the rest of the videos on our channel, youtube.com/Hak5, and you can find all of our shows at hak5.org. We've been making these, can you believe it now? It has been over 10 years that we've been making these shows, and it's all thanks to you guys, so thank you.
I feel so old.
Yes, you are an old lady. Indeed. I'm going to inch this way. I'm going to stay on the edge of the frame. This is heavy. So anyway.
If you want to support directly, you can find our custom-built hacking gear over at HAK Shop. That's hackshop.com. Or you can simply like and subscribe. You can tell your friends about the show. Pretty much share the show.
Yes.
We really appreciate it, and it helps our little business grow. Of course, if you are in Tokyo or Sydney as well, both of us are heading out to back against the timeline. What's it called?
We are. We're going to be traveling through time. It's going to be so much fun.
We're going to travel through time.
What we're doing? We're hacking across the planet.
We're hacking hack the planet.
We need to do something about that now. All right, we're going to have meetups though.
Tokyo, yeah, May 23rd. I'm going to have a meetup. I've already gotten some RSVPs. Go to snumsy.com/blog to sign up for that.
Yes, June 1st or 2nd or 3rd, something like that. It's going to be in the first week of June in Sydney. And I think we're also in the Gold Coast because I'm speaking at OSCERT 2016. So that's going to be really fun. Sebastian and I are even doing Wi-Fi Pineapple workshops at that conference.
Wow.
So I think it's the Gold Coast. So it should be a lot of fun. I hope to see you guys. I hope you meet all of the Japanese fans, and I'll meet all the Australian fans, and it'll be so much fun. That was them right now being like, woohoo, we're signing up. You can sign up at hak5.org. You'll find all the details for all of those, and we hope to see you there. All right, with that, I'm Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Morse.
Trust your Technolust. More flying.
Yes. Let's go back outside.
All right. When you have a great idea, you need to get it up on the internet quick. And how we do it here at Hak5 is we use domain.com. They have an awesome domain discovery system that'll help you find that perfect domain name, and their checkout process is easy, they're affordable, they're easy to use to get your website up and running in no time. And so get this, they are huge fans of Hak5, so they want to hook you up by giving you 15% off. All you have to do is use the coupon code HAK5 at checkout to save yourself 15% off. And you know what? Go ahead and tweet them at domain.com and say, thanks for supporting Hak5 all these years. So when you think domain names, think domain.com. Yeah, you got to correct for that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Overcorrecting.
Bring him back. And then make your left. Oh man.
That's great.